See if we have,
Okay.
yeah, I'm seeing some
Yep,
lights.
got
I'm seeing
sound.
lights.
There you go. When you talk, you can see it go.
Yeah, but it's not this one, I don't think.
No, it's not
No?
that one. It's
Okay.
something else.
So we're on another mic. Not sure which one, whether it's the computer. There's actually one up here too. Apparently not that one.
Okay. Dirty Goat heard us. Hi,
Yep.
Jeff.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me get this down a little bit. Okay. Is the quality decent? Okay.
Okay.
So I think what was happening on the other one was instead of this mic, there's actually a mic on that camera too, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That's
there's a
probably
mic
why
on-
it was that weird ass
There's a mic
sound.
on everything, Bear. It's tech.
5x5, huh?
Okay.
Okay, give everyone a chance to get back on here a minute. Okay.
So at any rate, it's not like any of the.
Give them a little time.
Yeah, Patrick,
You only got 8.
I did use the NSA spray. I used the NSA spray. I also turned around 3 times in a circle and clicked my heels. That'll drive away the CIA. I don't know about the other guys. The other guys all are different. But we can try whistling Dixie. That might help too. So everybody whistle Dixie.
Well, that's Hava Nagila. No. I don't know. Yep.
Yeah, we only have a few people here.
Yeah, 5 eyes.
Yeah, the other big mine down the road, Jeff, is the largest lithium brine operation in the United States. So I think they're doing some good stuff with lithium there.
Oh.
And now we're looking at Elon Musk, who apparently is planning to use salt. Elon Musk is going to be using salt for something in lithium. He went and patented something, but then again, Elon does all kinds of weird shit. But in other news, they found a way to replace the indium that is used in dimming screens and smart windows and all that happy stuff with a brand new plasma manufacturing system that creates a hybrid nanocomposite material, which is indium free. The plasma generated material is composed of tungsten oxide and silver and can be applied to coat almost any solid surface, including flexible plastics. And this stuff is apparently going to be really, really thin coating. A layer of silver approximately 10,000 times thinner than the width of a human hair, placed in between 2 nano-thin layers of tungsten oxide decorated with silver nanoparticles. It can then be applied to electronic papers, smartphones, glass windows, etc. Now, silver has been in discussion this week in some regards because a couple of people put out a paper that showed the manifest lunacy behind trying to go carbon neutral, all green, fancy dancy stuff by 2030 or by 2050 or by 2070. And the end result was someone that had some actual common sense pointed out that if we went through with these plans, there would be massive unsustainability because there quite simply is not enough of the materials that you need to support that infrastructure available on this planet. In fact, it probably isn't available in this solar system, but they're cockeyed optimists. They figure we'll be mining asteroids any day now. So that brought up a discussion of silver elsewhere. And consensus of opinion in the silver market is yes, paper silver is still a ridiculous problem. According to the US Mint, the only reason they're not minting silver coins for all of us to buy like crazy is because they don't have enough rounds or something. This sounds quite interesting. They apparently have the silver, but it is not in the form that one turns it into coins in. But The consensus of opinion in the banking world on the issue is that silver is not anywhere near what will be the high point for it. Most of the people out there that I would actually trust are looking for a high point of $50 to $100 an ounce for silver when it finally gets there. And consensus of opinion is silver, like gold, is, of course, being artificially suppressed, has always been, probably will always be, because governments are like that. It's a government thing, as we know. Yeah, that's my thought too, Chris. If we mine asteroids, it would make more sense to, yeah, David, they were saying they didn't have rounds. If they had plenty of rounds, they could stamp coins. So that's their current story, and they're sticking to it. And yes, Chris, if we mine asteroids, it would make far more sense to use the stuff in space. I don't know if we will ever get around to that. Jeff, it would not surprise me if he had staked a whole bunch, if Elon Musk had staked a whole bunch of claims across Nevada. Elon is a very, very strange sort of technocrat. I don't know quite what to make of him at the moment. I don't like Starlink. I do like his spaceships. I think his cars are really stupid, but that's just me. You know, I'm not a fan of those cars. Never will be. And I think one of the reasons they're paying so much attention to lithium at the moment, in terms of the green thing, is another article that came up about how the lithium supply chain is threatened by East-West geopolitical tensions. Oh, gee. Geopolitical risks and tensions between the U.S. and Pandaland pose threats to the global lithium supply chain. Based on questions asked by participants in the webinar Global Lithium Outlook, Key Themes for a Fast-Growing, Fast-Evolving Sector, the report presents the view of Fitch's experts on what the future of the lithium market may look like. Increasingly tense relationships between the West, a rising battery manufacturer and key EV market, and China, a dominant lithium processor player and current leading battery manufacturers, are the main issues raising risks over the resilience of supply chains. Well, this leads us again to my obviously biased contention that relying on a foreign power, especially one that does not like you, for critical elements of your supply chain is a really, really dumbass idea. Whether it is food, whether it is metal, whether it is batteries, it is still a dumbass idea. And that is one of the reasons it's a dumbass idea. Because while the rest of us have been farting around and allowing environmentalists to shut our mining systems down, China has been expanding their mining and their hideous environmental practices and mining safety practices into every nation that they can get their grubby little hands on. So we are in a very bad position in that regard. And one of the considerations behind the assertion is the fact that on the supply front, the lithium market is geographically quite concentrated from a production and ownership perspective, both on the upstream front with extraction dominated by Australia, China, and Chile, and the downstream front with chemical processing and battery manufacturing dominated by China. The ongoing deglobalization trend and rising efforts to localize supply chains to some extent mean governments are likely to increase local raw material supply or promote long-term supply agreements. As a result, the entire EV battery value chain manufacturing landscape, from lithium extraction to battery manufacturing and EV manufacturing, is expected to change in the coming years as developing markets aim to reduce their dependence on China. In any case, we believe the growing rivalry between China and the U.S. and their allies or areas of influence pose rising and significant risks to the lithium sector, as it could disrupt demand and trade flows when tensions rise. Some market players are anticipating, and for example, senior management at BMW mentioned in 2021 when signing a long-term supply agreement with U.S.-based Livent, that they were making themselves technologically, geographically, and geopolitically less dependent on individual suppliers. Notably, their other supplier is China-based Ganfeng. Yeah. So an interesting dynamic is developed in that finally, apparently, some companies and some people in the West are realizing that allowing the Panda Patrol to make massive incursions into worldwide supply chains was kind of a bad idea. We do not know where that's going to lead. We need to look at the larger supply chain as to where it's going to lead as well, because we do not belong with, it is not a good idea for your national security critical infrastructure supplies to be sourced outside your own country if it is avoidable. And unfortunately, Lord Malarkey and his servants who are hanging out in the albino manner these days have quite the opposite point of view on this. And this is not going to bode well at all. Patrick, I hadn't seen that they had threatened to nuke Japan today, but they threatened to nuke a few people, so it would not surprise me at all. And yes, David, Azerbaijan is also a huge untapped mineral deposit. And David, yep, the stock market crash is coming. The stock market fell, I believe it was about 1,000 points either today or yesterday. They're not very happy right now because Yellen earlier this week actually acknowledged that, yes, we have inflation and it's probably going to get higher, but naturally it's only temporary and we're keeping a close eye on it. And our treasury bond yields actually dropped. I believe they're currently at a staggering 1.3%. So it's like, yeah, this is not looking good in that regard either. The basis of the market is entirely smoke and mirrors at this point anyway. I mean, everyone I know that has or had significant presence in the market that is an ordinary person, I don't know ultra rich people, started removing themselves from the market before our president left office, before the inception of the reign of Lord Malarkey. So I personally am not in the market at the moment. I think I might.
I hope not.
No, of course not. I sold my one and only share of PG&E
No, I
some months ago.
I hope you're not in the market.
Yeah, I would say, Robert, that it may be a little better than gambling. If you really want to do well in the market, it would be a good idea to find out what firms Madame Pelosi's husband uses and Madame Pelosi uses, and whatever they do, you do. Because surprisingly enough, if you actually took a look at our Congress critters' performance in their portfolios in the market, somehow, apparently, when you get into Congress, you develop this massive secret superpower that allows you to predict the market with an accuracy and profit margin that far exceeds the best firms out there. The portfolios of our Congress critters stunningly outperform everybody else. Bull market, bear market, steady state market, doesn't matter. So apparently one of the secret superpowers you develop when you become a Congress critter is you figure out how to predict the market. So if we do what the Congress critters do, then we should become rich. And Jason, Bear will be back very shortly. When I'm here with the tinfoil hat on, we are talking about other things. In terms of mining itself, copper prices did go through a slight drop this week, and that was not unexpected. It is being forecast as a good thing by the big markets because it means that smaller interests can begin to restock some of their supplies. And apparently, the Chinese are planning to reduce to continue to put some of their stocks out on the market. So we're going to be seeing infusions of nickel and copper and iron coming out of China that are supposedly going to be stabilizing prices for a while. Long-term commodities forecast on metals is still going basically vertical at this point, especially for the metals that are involved in green technology, because our government is pushing the great green agenda these days, which is not unsurprising at all. In terms of regulatory things, there still is not much in the way of new solid guidance coming out of BLM. As a matter of fact, there isn't much of anything coming out of BLM that is useful to the average individual. Last I checked, the eco-terrorist that they have nominated to take charge of the BLM is still in confirmation hearing status. They're not going to withdraw her nomination, and she is probably going to get the job because, after all, as an eco-terrorist, she is absolutely qualified to run the Bureau of Land Management. So that's, that is neither here nor there. At this point, all we can do is continue to file our paperwork as expected by the government. Make sure your claims are perfected. Make sure all your stakes are there. Check your stakes regularly because there's more and more chatter going on online and more pictures showing up online of environmentalists out there removing stakes and then reporting, that these claims are invalid. And so it's a good idea whenever you go to your claim to check all your stakes and get a time-stamped picture to prove that the darn things are there. Make sure your paperwork has not been removed. Make sure that your paperwork is in order, because the environmentalists are now out in force again on our public lands and trying to do what they can to make sure that mining claims get invalidated. And that's not a hassle that you want to have to put up with. So, and as Bear said, we actually had somebody break into ours, which is quite surprising, rather ridiculous, and we're going to have to do something about it. But
Tripwires, landmines? No, I'd probably trip over the tripwires.
I was thinking little mason jars full of chlorine and ammonia, so that when they break, we get chlorine gas.
Yeah.
That was just me.
Okay, let's try and keep it not personal, folks. Yeah, I wouldn't want them to kill themselves. I'm thinking about putting a sign that says bad air.
They're still tapping down the gold and silver prices, and I suspect they will be doing that for some time, because with the Basel III regulations that came in, the bankers now have to have certain amounts of these things on hand if they're going to be dealing with the paper. And, well, they want to be able to buy it at the lowest price they can. So, I would expect the prices to stay fairly stable for a time. The big banks are still predicting 2,500 to 3,000 an ounce gold in the next 2 years, and around $100 an ounce silver in the next 2 years. And for some bizarre reason, despite the fact that Treasury bonds right now are at 1.3%, Bank of America was the only big bank the last several buying cycles that is buying Treasury bonds. Don't know what they're up to, but I don't bank with them unless I have to anyway, because they're scammers. Don't bank with Bank of America. Don't bank with Chase either, because Chase really sucks. Time for a local bank. Ooh, that's a good one, Chris. Killer bees. And yes, they do want us all out of it, David. Mm-hmm.
What's the LBMA?
National Park Service. Not sure. I'm going to have to read up on the
Exempt from Basel III.
Yeah, a lot of things are exempt from Basel III. I don't think Basel III is going to be anywhere near as good as everybody thought it would be because everything that could really make a difference was left out of it. That's the way it usually works.
No, I haven't heard, Jeff, but that sounds perfectly consistent with what they've been doing so far.
Yeah, that does sound pretty consistent, Jeff. As to Lord Malarkey and company, we have all heard that they are now officially partnered with and working hand in hand with Facebook. And I'm sure that is true for other social media. Therefore, I am not on social media. And as soon as we can practically find a way to transfer our Facebook kettle corn page to the guy who's running the kettle corn now, Bear and I are going to be nuking Facebook entirely from our lives, including his ISMS Facebook page, which we seldom use anyway, because frankly, there is zero reason to be dealing with social media at this point. They are beyond useless. So,
Yeah, Mohammed, it looks pretty spooky, but with a safety rope, it's not that bad. The ladder is just steep. It's not difficult, although my legs may disagree.
Mohammed, it may look scary. I did it.
Yep.
I'm a little old lady and a very, very novice rappeller, and I didn't have a problem with it. It only looks really weird. Man, David, they locked you out of your claims in Colorado? Oh,
Fire.
yeah, London Boyle. Yep.
The fires. That could happen here. We could be locked out of the forest yet too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
They seem to think they own it.
But basically, what I'm going to be doing this week is I'm going to be doing some more digging into what's going on. Oh, thank you. I'm glad I scare you, Mohammed. I like scaring people. I'm a short little old lady. If I scare people, maybe they won't hurt me. Just saying, it's better to scare people. Sun Tzu, look bigger and meaner than you are. When you're weak, look strong.
Yep. No, Eva is sneakier than I am.
Yeah, I'm sneaky. I'm very sneaky. But what I'm going to be looking into this week is I'm going to be doing some more digging into BLM and seeing if I can find any indicators of what they're actually up to over there. Because there are all kinds of rumor and scuttlebutt that's going on online of people having isolated weird stuff happening with their mining claims here, there, and everywhere. Some of it is coordinated effort by environmentalists to get claims invalidated. They are really getting good at this. But some of it is problems with the government entities, usually Forest Service, but sometimes BLM, also causing problems with people's perfectly valid mining claims. And since BLM is putting nothing on their public website now anymore that is not woke, rah-rah, cheerleading HR announcements about, this week's employee of the month type thing, it's getting really difficult to find out what they're actually doing. It's bizarre. I do know our local offices are extremely overworked for some reason, but they seem to be fairly nice people otherwise. And yes, you're right, David. They did get busted for LIBOR. A lot of people got busted for LIBOR. And I believe our final death count of suicided bankers after that one was at 75 last time I checked. But
it's very depressing when your bank gets in trouble.
But at any rate, we are going to be trying to get off Facebook at some point. So at some point, y'all won't be able to find us on Facebook anymore. I will let you know when that happens. The other thing I'm working on is I'm looking at social media platforms other than YouTube to start putting Bear's videos on and to try to get a live stream going someplace else too, so that if we have to, we can get off YouTube. We did think about the super chat thing, and if you guys really, really want it, that is up to you, but neither one of us wants to give YouTube 30% of anything. We would rather get 100% of nothing than give YouTube 30% of anything, because YouTube is kind of ridiculous sometimes.
Okay, I forgot to switch to live chat. Okay, go ahead and post something, people, because there we go. Yep.
Yeah, Patrick, I believe there was one 3 or 4 months ago. We had another banker that just mysteriously fructified.
Yep.
I think the last body count I saw on the issue was 75 or 76 since the initial LIBOR scandal. But I'm going to go digging and seeing where the actual body count is now, and whether anything else interesting has come out of that.
Not all of them, but yeah.
Yeah, the FTC is well, that particular label, winging it, applies to basically every alphabet agency out there. I don't even like NASA anymore. Okay, even NASA's getting weird. We are looking at 08 again in terms of the economy. Actually, right now, there have been more and more memes showing up, and it's even been mentioned in the great leftist media that we are revisiting the mid-70s. We're revisiting about 1973. I mean, this is,
I think
Carterville
inflation will get worse than then.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's accelerating.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
it's accelerating, and the feds are now at least admitting it is accelerating. They're not doing anything about it, but they are at least admitting that it is accelerating, and naturally they're saying that it is not going to be a problem.
Not for them.
Depends on what they consider to be a problem. But anyway, I will turn it over to Bear, since Bear has 10,000 really cool things to tell you guys about leaching, and I will see you next week.
Oh.
Buy GameStop if you buy stock. Oh, and one more thing. If anybody runs into any actual ball brand and not counterfeit, wide-mouthed canning jars, the lids, not the rings, not the jars, the lids, if you run into those, I like those as much as I like rocks.
I think, yeah, they're impossible to find.
Yeah.
I've been looking for months
That's
because I was going to try to increase my inventory at home.
The one place I found, Rockhound has the BPA-free lids that are made by Pure Mason. They had wide mouth quartz when I was there the other day. I bought 5 boxes.
Oh, I may have to go buy some.
Okay.
Yeah, Rockhand's been a good source.
They didn't have any of the standard ones, but they had the BPA-free ones at a higher price.
Okay, folks. Now I've got 3 different things up here at once, so you're just going to have to try and ignore certain things while you look at others. So let's get to the very basics. If you have a valuable mineral in the rock, unless it's the rock itself, like sand and gravel or pure silica sand or something like that, you have to separate the valuable mineral from the rock. There may be more than one valuable mineral, but if they're not separate, it doesn't do you any good. So the whole field of getting valuable metallic minerals out of rocks is called extractive metallurgy. And it has a lot of different facets to it, but it all comes to the same thing, trying to get the good stuff away from the rock. Now, we're going to focus on gold here, although many of these techniques can be used for things other than gold. Okay? But is Brighteon in your possibilities? Not sure. We're looking in the neighborhood of what, 50 to 100 of those lids, or what, little one?
Yeah, I would like to have at least Another 50 or 60. They come in 12 packs.
50 to 100, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay.
They have to be the genuines. There are counterfeits everywhere right now.
Yeah. So to get gold separated from other minerals, gold comes in two major classes, placer and hard rock. Placer is what Jim's specialty is. That's sands, gravels, things like that. And as such, in most cases, the gold is already broken away from the other minerals. And quite often, the really, really fine stuff is all washed away. So you don't have to worry about the really fine stuff. And with coarser gold like that, and it's already broken free, in almost every case, the most economic way to get it is what they call a gravity separation. This is where you use the difference in density to make the gold go someplace, well, the rock goes someplace else. A sluice, a jig, a gold pan, a Riffle table, all those are gravity techniques. They rely upon the difference in density of the gold to make it do something different than the rest of the rock, which is less dense. That's called a gravity separation. The bigger the gold particle, the easier that is to work. Big nuggets are almost impossible to lose unless you reject them off the screen.
Right.
Anyway else, they're just going to sit and they're going to hang up and not move. So when you get gold this coarse, that you should get 100% recovery in a gravity separation. And this is this kind of yellow curve here. The larger gold particles are here, the smaller are there. I didn't think, but I should have gotten some microfine gold for this, but oh well. Now, as the particles get smaller, your recovery gets worse and worse. Somewhere around 100 mesh would be about here. That's where you really start to lose in gravity separations. Up until then, you should get almost 100% recovery.
Correct.
Now, another way of recovering the gold is used almost exclusively in hard rock. It's also used for a vast variety of other minerals. It's a very versatile technique called flotation. In order for it to work, the gold particle or the mineral particles have to be separate from the rock particles. You have to crush rock to get it to that point. Hard rock, the valuable mineral is not separate from the other minerals. You have to crush it and separate it if you need it separate. And flotation works kind of in the mid-range. It doesn't work for the very smallest gold, and it won't work for the very biggest gold. It's not going to float those nuggets, okay? It's basically sand size to powder size in there is where you can get your recoveries. Leaching, on the other hand, oh no, Mohammed, I'm dealing with 2,000 mesh right now, and it can get smaller than that, okay? Leaching, on the other hand, literally dissolves the gold from the rock. It, just like you would dissolve sugar in water. If you had a mixture of sugar and sand and you wanted to get just the sugar, pour water on it, filter it. Now the sugar's in the water, evaporate the water, and voila, you've now got the sugar separate from the sand. Leaching for gold, gold does not dissolve very easily, so you have to use certain chemicals to dissolve it. David Reese says, how do you see 2,000 mesh gold with a microscope, or in our case, they used a scanning electron microscope. But in order to get the proper chemistry to work on leaching, the chemical has to touch the gold particle. Now, if you grind it to the point where all the gold particles are loose from all the rock particles, that works great, but you don't have to get it that far. Here we have three different examples. This is called mineral liberation. This is where you grind it to where the gold particles in orange are separate from the rock particles in brown. They're completely separate entities. They'll leach very fast because the leach solution can get to them at all sides. It works fine. However, for leaching, unlike flotation or gravity, you do not need to break the gold away from the mineral. You just need to get one side of the gold exposed to the leach solution. That is called mineral exposure. You're exposing the mineral. And that works for leaching. You can go with a larger grind size because as long as those particles are where the leaching solution can get to them, that is adequate. That's not as fine as you need for mineral liberation. If the gold is completely surrounded by the minerals, it's called crystal locked. And if you've got crystal locked gold and the mineral is not porous, like spongy iron oxide would allow you to get to it slowly.
Limestone.
But if it's in quartz or something like that, then that gold is simply inaccessible. It cannot be recovered by leaching. Okay? So, when you're leaching, you want to grind it to mineral exposure or mineral liberation, ideally. You're always going to have some crystal locked unless you grind it really, really fine.
That might not do it.
And that's going to cost you a lot of money, and it creates a lot of secondary problems. Now, another thing about leaching is it works better the smaller the gold particles are. If you eliminate crystal locking and certain chemical conflicts that can occur, the finer the gold, the closer you will approach 100% recovery. And that is why, in some cases, leaching is vastly better than gravity or flotation.
Well, usually in any one of these systems, they'll use gravity in the beginning just to verify that there isn't anything there to get.
Well, another thing is, see, the leaching goes down when you start getting in coarse particles.
Right.
Because they're too big to dissolve it.
Right.
None of these chemicals, except for aqua regia, which is way too expensive and reactive for a plant, you can do it in the lab, but nowhere else,
Right.
will leach effectively larger gold particles.
Right.
So you're going to lose it. So by having a gravity separation first to get the big stuff, and then a leaching for the small stuff, you're going to get virtually everything.
Right.
Okay. So that's why you can use both of them. Or if it's all coarse gold, gravity would be fine. If it's all microfine gold, leaching might be fine.
Yep.
The particular gold that we're using here, yes, I do need a centrifuge. I don't know how large. If you can send me the specs, do you have my, I need a lab centrifuge for 50 mil tubes. If you can send me the information to my email, I'd appreciate it, David. If it's a large laboratory centrifuge, it may be very, very useful. Now, so the gold at the particular mine I'm working at right now, Montana B, 80% of it is 2,000 mesh or smaller.
Not visual.
Yeah, you can't even see it. Powdered sugar is coarse by comparison. Okay. So gravity has proved to be ineffective. If I just stir it up and let it sit for a couple minutes and then pour off the liquid on top, it's got more gold per pound than the ore did. Yeah, this stuff floats real well. Doesn't work well. Flotation is a possibility to get a concentrate, but it's probably not going to be a real concentrated concentrate.
You'd probably end up there anyway.
And then we're going to have to finish it off with leaching anyway.
Right.
So leaching works for very, very fine gold. Does one type of leaching work for all metal? No, don't need one the size of a truck. Sorry. No. Different chemistries work for different things for two reasons. Number one, certain things don't dissolve in certain chemicals, but also you'll generally want specificity. You don't want to dissolve every metal that's there, only the ones you want to get. For example, if you are wanting to get copper, then sulfuric acid works just fine. In Arizona, they use thousands of tons a day of sulfuric acid to leach copper out of the dumps up there. And that works fine. Very, very inexpensive. But for gold, you're generally going to use cyanide, some kind of halide like bromine or chlorine, or a thiosulfate. There's potassium, I don't know. This one is probably calcium thiosulfate that I'm using, okay? And they react with the gold and they turn it into a dissolvable chemical complex, they call it, okay? And so it's turns to liquid, just like I say, in the sugar and sand thing, it'll be the sand. Chris says ammonium thiosulfate
Could be.
is likely. I'm not sure. It's a proprietary blend we're using right now, so I'm not sure. But it's got thiosulfate in it and a few other little things to speed things up. But it's because the gold is very, very fine at Montana B, the leaching solution seems to dissolve it very, very quickly. Now, some of you might wonder, why does it dissolve faster when it's smaller? And everything does. If you take rock candy versus powdered sugar and throw them in water, the powdered sugar will dissolve much faster. Now, the reason why is that, Jim?
The contact, surface area.
Surface area, exactly.
Of the
The
particle.
The dissolving works only at the surface where the liquid and the solid contact.
Yep.
Now here I've drawn a cube. Now let's assume that this is a 2-inch cube, 2 inches on a side. So you have 6 sides, each one of 4 square inches. 4 square inches times 6 sides, you got 24 square inches of surface area. Now if you take the exact same amount of material and cut it again into 1-inch cubes, you now have 8 cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One back there. Okay. Each one 1 inch on a side. So it's 1 square inch per face times 6 faces. So that'd be 6 square inches per cube times 8 cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Gives you 48 square inches of surface area. So by cutting it in half, you double the surface area. Yep. If you do it again, you get the same thing. You double. Every time you cut it in half, it's half the size, you double the surface area.
Yep.
Well, the difference between 100 mesh gold and 2,000 mesh gold, it's 5.5 times smaller. Okay? So you've got something like over 100 times the surface area. Okay? I think it's actually more than that. I think it's
Probably is more than that.
2, 4, 8, 16, 32. But anyhow, it's a lot.
Yep.
And because of that, it'll dissolve vastly faster. Now, there's another phenomenon. It's very, very close, Jeff. And Chris says you get a lot more than double. I know it's a logarithmic sort of thing there. But anyhow, the basic principle is the smaller the particles, the more the surface area per pound of material. Now, I do not argue math with Chris very often.
No, it's probably a good idea not to.
It doesn't usually work. He'll point out my screw up pretty
That's
easily.
good though.
But that's the principle. As it gets real fine,
Right.
it gets a lot more surface area. But there's another thing too. Many of these chemical reactions, when they're working on the surface, tend to leave a residue behind. And when that residue gets thick enough, it can no longer dissolve anymore.
Yeah, you get it.
That's called passivation. You're pacifying the surface. Okay? And as such, larger particles may become completely impossible to dissolve no matter how long you took. Okay. Violent agitation helps because you're constantly scrubbing that off and grinding it up into smaller particles and stuff.
Scabbing it.
And so that's why you would use leaching, is because it works better on the fine gold that you can't get any other way. The negative to leaching is, first of all, you're using things called chemicals. The most common chemical for a long time has been sodium cyanide. It's cheap, it's versatile, it's fairly simple to use.
It's efficient.
It's economic, but if you mishandle it, it can be deadly.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds scary. So even though the chlorine gas they put in your drinking water is more dangerous than cyanide, people are afraid of one and not the other. Although, trust me, at a big municipal swimming pool, if those chlorine
they just had that
containers were to
the
rupture,
other day.
Yeah, it can be
Some
bad
kids
thing.
that got burned really bad from a over chlorinated pool at Six Flags, I think.
And here's a.
Well, if you ever put your fingers in bleach, or you get bleach on your bare hands
feel
and they feel slippery all of a sudden, that's because your skin is turning to soap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's from the sodium hydroxide they used to stabilize the bleach. Yeah, Badradine. There's a lot of chemical reactions and side reactions and all kinds of things that can be involved because the rock is a complex material. It's not one thing or two things. It may be 100 different things. And therefore, you have to check your ore with each chemistry and see how you need to adjust it. Smoking jogging, leach fluid used in a ball mill, it certainly can. You know? And Jeff Bybee, passivation effect, that just means the surface can only react for so long before it can no longer react because it's got crud on it. Ball mills can be either wet or dry. In mining, they're usually wet. If you're making cement, they're usually dry. So this particular leachant, the thiosulfate base, are relatively non-toxic. I mean, anything will kill you if you eat enough of it. Salt will kill you. Okay? But it's a thiosulfate leach. It's relatively non-toxic. It operates in relatively mild pHs. So far, it's worked really well down around a pH of 10. And I've got this last test was running between 9.5 in some places.
And that looked better, I thought.
And but it certainly...
The tests will tell.
Yeah. I don't know how much the gold dissolved. The settling was much better. And that's a good segue into the side reactions and such. Because I was running a number of different parallel tests. One of them, because the pH needed so little adjustment, I put no lime in it at all. No pH adjustment, just the leachant. It's called Eco Goldex, by the way. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. It seems to be working very well. But without any lime, all the stuff just settled. Do you want to get those two tubes there? And later on in the process, getting a clear solution can be very, very useful. So if we did need minor adjustment, wow, that really did settle, didn't it?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I think the lower pH is actually...
These are basically the exact same stuff, settled the exact same time. This one here has just a little bit of lime in it, and this one does not. They have the same amount of dissolving chemical called Lixivant in it. They've got the same amount of Eco Goldex. They've been run for the same time. The difference is no lime, just a smidge of lime. You can see why that could be very, very useful. If we don't need the pH adjustment at all, you can just get rid of the lime. It lowers your cost, lowers your complexity, and makes life a lot simpler later. if you do need to adjust the pH, you might want to adjust by using sodium hydroxide instead of lime. You'd need a lot less of it, and the side reactions may be sufficiently different. You don't have that dispersant quality to it. Patrick Jones, how many precious metals will go into leach with the leach you're using? According to the manufacturer, all of them. I have not verified that yet. The only thing I've had laboratory tested was gold through a local laboratory here. They're using, I believe it's ICP on the solution itself. And so I can't verify the others. The manufacturer says it will dissolve all of them, the platinum group and the silver. I'm not that familiar with bentonite, but you'd probably be better filtering it through something like diatomaceous earth. Although if it settles that well, you don't need to filter it at all. You can just let it settle. And that is a lot simpler than filtration. Filters always plug. They slow things down. Settling can be done without anything ever plugging. And basically, depending on how much you need to do, you just get a bigger pond, which are cheap.
That's a possibility, Chris, that it does show some aluminum or something in it.
I have no idea.
That could.
Yeah, we will figure it out in terms of from a practical standpoint. Now, as many of you may have noticed, Chris is a far better theoretical chemist than I am. Okay, and that's great. I really appreciate all the help he gives me and on the channel here and everything else. Just like Jim here is a far greater placer miner than I am.
Chris is our resident rocket scientist.
Yeah. Yeah, David, I don't know how well bentonite. I think a plastic liner would be simpler and easier. But again, I have no experience with bentonite, so I couldn't tell you. But usually you'd be using tanks and things like that more than ponds. However, I will get into that shortly here. Our particular ore is what matters to me. If I was still down in Tucson, I'd be doing Ryan's ore. And Ryan, this is coarse enough, I can get 80% recovery with pure gravity, nothing else. So different ore, different technique. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen made over my many years in this business is people taking something that works over there and trying to make it work over here without checking to see if that works first. It's kind of like taking the tool that turns that bolt and then trying to apply it to this one. You better check to make sure it fits.
You need the right size wrench.
Otherwise, it's not going to work. But anyhow, so I would say the tests are going very well at this stage. Now, let me get more in the details of leaching systems. Okay. Now, the first thing you have to do is you have to have ore, and you have to have a lixiviant. That basically means you're leaching chemical. That could be thio, that could be cyanide, that could be a halide. Okay. But you have to have some kind of chemical that will dissolve the gold in an environment that it can work. And that's completely dependent on the ore. For example, there's something called thiourea that I believe uses an acid leach. I've got stuff that's 30% dolomite. That's going to neutralize a lot of acid.
Yep. Going to burn up a lot of product.
Would be horrible.
Yep.
The thio leach I'm using works in a basic environment. The rock itself is right about the pH it needs to work.
Evidently,
beautiful.
What you're seeing.
Beautiful. Okay, so you need to get the ore plus the lixiviant, and this gives you pregnant solution. and it gives you spent tailings. Now you'll notice that just magically, by drawing on the board, these two lines diverge. And you've got all this liquid here and all this solid here, just magically. Well, guess what? In reality, magic doesn't work. You have to have a solid liquid separation phase here. You have to do something to get the solution away from the tailings. Okay? You can use filtration, you can use settling, you can use a lot of different things. Okay? From the pregnant solution, then you've got to get recovery out of that solution. And this can go a couple different ways, well, actually 3 different ways that I'm aware of. The first one was metal precipitation. That they used to use powdered zinc. When they put the powdered zinc in the solution, the zinc would go into the solution, the gold would come out, plate onto the zinc, you'd filter it, and then smelt it down. This is relatively expensive and inefficient. Okay? They replaced that with carbon adsorption. Okay? Now, the gold cyanide complex will stick to activated carbon fairly effectively. Okay? Now, the problem is now you've got to get it off the carbon. Okay? Nowadays, they'll often use resins similar to the resin you'd find in your water softener because it'll absorb and desorb ions. Okay? So you've got carbon or resin absorption here. And the other one is direct electrowinning. Okay? Now, that just means electroplating it directly out of solution.
Correct.
To be economical and efficient, generally you have to have a fairly high concentration of gold in a fairly clean solution. Okay? Those are your 2 basic things. When you're like heap leaching gold or something like that, your concentrations are so low, this makes no sense. Okay? So you have to use this absorption step first. What I'm doing with the ore grades I've got, I may very well be able to do direct electrowinning. That's one of the things we're going to check because in our circumstance, it's within the realms of possibility. It's kind of like on that previous graph, it's in one of those overlap areas. Okay? Now, the nice thing about direct electrowinning is from there, all you do is smelt it.
Right.
Okay?
Plating it off.
You're done. You got doré.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. You can pour a bar.
Now, metal precipitation, smelt, and doré. Okay? Here it gets a little bit more complex. Okay? Now, it is possible to ash your carbon or your resin, smelt it, and go direct to doré. It's extremely wasteful. You're throwing away a lot of expensive carbon and resin. So generally,
that's what they used to do with the coconut carbon fiber that they used years ago, didn't they? They just smoked it off.
You can. Nowadays,
or they go aqua
they strip it.
They strip it.
They strip it with a hot cyanide solution generally. Okay? That is called desorption. Okay? And then you go electrowinning. And then smelting and doré. Now you see this adds this adsorption, desorption step. That's complicated. You got some chemicals. In the case of cyanide, you're now dealing with very high temperature, high concentration cyanide solutions that are really, really dangerous and stuff. And in the case of the thio complex, they're resins that ambient temperature, ambient pressure, reasonably mild chemicals can kick that gold back off of it and regenerate the resin to where it can be reused again. So it's a lot simpler than with carbon. And not sure what's the best to do here. This is the most versatile because it'll work under a wide range of
I
stuff.
watched a video of Eco Goldex where they were going direct to the electrowinning,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked like a really nice way to do something to me. If you can do it, like you say, if the quality of your pregnant solution is clear enough to, go that direction.
Yeah, let's say. Well,
And this looks simple because they were doing it with gold, they were doing it with silver, and they were doing it with plating the copper out using the Eco Goldex. And it was a pretty good video.
David, in terms of tons of ounces, the carbon adsorption desorption is probably the most volume. I mean, they do the most gold that way in the planet if they haven't replaced it with resin instead. So yes, it works well. At the mine I was at, we got 3,000 ounces a month was our target goal. Okay, and we generally made our target. In terms of shouldn't need to smelt with electrowinning, yeah, you get extra pure. You wind up with a doré bar instead of a bunch of sludge. There you go, Terry. Take care, and we'll finish up.
See you, Terry.
So anyhow, this is what we're looking at doing. This is the simplest. This adds complexity, but it can do stuff that one can't.
Correct.
Most importantly, you have a variety of ways of leaching the gold. You have heap leaching, where you pile the ore on top of a sheet of plastic generally, sprinkle the solution on top, it comes out, and you've got your pregnant solution here. You also have something called vat leaching, where you put it in a vat. There's a drain here. On the side of a hill is the usual way to do this. And you put your ore in here, and you fill it with solution, and you let it soak, and then you drain it. You put some more solution, and you drain it like that.
Yep.
Now, the advantage of this over that is you get a 100% contact of the solution with the ore, whereas here you have some kind of channeling. You will get a higher recovery with this than that, but building these vats, loading them and unloading them is more expensive than just piling rock on a sheet of plastic.
Correct.
Then you have the most efficient yet, and I'm going to draw a Pachuca tank here, just for jollies. And that's agitated tank leaching. Okay? You fill this with slurry, and you can stir it a number of ways. I like a Pachuca tank because it's the simplest. You have an air line that goes into a pipe here and blows air. These bubbles make this column of liquid lighter than the stuff outside, and it creates a circulation.
Right.
It's an airlift dredge.
Yep.
Okay? This provides a lot of agitation and a lot of aeration
Contact.
without very many moving parts. You have an air compressor over here. That's your only moving part.
Right.
Okay? And it can do multiple tanks and this and that. So it has less complexity than some others.
Hello, Jeff.
So anyhow, we supply the third one. Agitated tank leaching, I'm guessing. Be happy to look at your stuff, Jason. Yes, Dirty Goat. Smelting rock is incredibly energy intensive, and to directly smelt the rock itself is, in most cases, ludicrously inefficient. If you had something that was running like 30% gold,
Right. The concentration
it
of
wouldn't be
gold would
bad.
have to be, or silver or whatever, it'd have to be really, really, really high grade ore.
So high grade that you
Right.
sell it for specimens.
Yeah, well, or you could sell it directly to somebody else and let them deal with the, with the smelting or issue.
Hey, Jane Munska, what's up? We're talking leaching precious metals right now. So anyhow, these are your 3 basic ways of leaching gold. Now there is another way of leaching that's been very little used right now, never used for gold, and that's called in situ leaching. Here's the surface of the earth. Here's your ore body. You drill wells into your ore body. You have injection wells and recovery wells.
That's what they do with uranium.
Uranium can do this. They're trying it on copper now.
They do it with uranium.
And you pump the solution down, and you pump the solution back out.
Yep.
And first thing, you'd have to have a relatively porous ore body to get any kind of decent recovery. You also have to be using a solution that's not horribly environmentally unfriendly.
Correct.
And you have to have something that has large volumes to work with. You couldn't do this on a small ore body.
No.
It's got to be big.
No.
Okay. But they've done it with uranium, and they're working on it with copper now. Overall, in the long run, it may be the least efficient of the 3, but you don't have to mine the rock.
That's just
You don't have to crush the rock.
It's drilling, which they're doing when they're testing anyway.
And you're not disturbing the environment. When you're done, you cap your wells and go home.
Yep.
Okay.
Or cement them shut.
So this is the kind of thing that they're working on for certain applications, but it does not work with gold because gold is in too small an ore bodies, too irregular an ore bodies, and the chemicals you got to use are not environmentally friendly enough.
Right.
As you can see, there's no way to 100% contain this.
Nope.
There is going to be
into a water table or a system.
Yeah. And so anyhow, we're looking at possibly these 2. We've got a high grade ore. This will get you like 60 to 70% recovery. This will get you like maybe 75 to 90% recovery. And this will usually get you like 90 to 99% recovery. So this is more expensive, less expensive, least expensive. Best recovery, middle recovery, worst recovery. What matters is your ore grade and your ore recoveries. This is for low grade ores.
Really?
Because it's really cheap and you can make money on some really low grade ores even at horrible efficiencies. This is for mid grade ores. Somewhere around 1 or 2/10 of an ounce per ton. This is for high grade ores. Now, if you had a really high-grade material, like I believe it was Smoking Joking was talking about last week, where you got like 2 ounces out of a bucket.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what you would do first
Is gravity.
is you would do a gravity separation first.
Yep. Then assay your tailings.
And then send the tailings to a tank leach.
Right.
Okay. Because I can guarantee you there's going to be enough fine stuff he loses to at least make this worthwhile.
I'm sure.
And the stuff he was showing in that pan is too big to leach effectively. So you wouldn't want to do that. Now, that is rich enough theoretically, you can maybe go to an aqua regia leach, but why bother? Just gravity set and then go to something like this.
If you're getting a good enough percentage out on the gravity, what you're getting out on the leaching circuit is just a bonus.
Okay, Jason, what means low grade? How many grams per ton? 0.5 to 3 grams per ton. Mid grade, 2 to 15 grams per ton. High grade, 10 grams per ton. Plus. Now, those are just rough numbers. It depends on a number of factors of where your economic break-evens are and when you should go from one to the other. But those are rough industry kind of standard numbers. It'll get you in the ballpark. Gives you an idea what it is. What is the suggested grade for cyanide? Cyanide can be used in any of these.
Right. About the same scenario.
The open pit heap leach has been cyanide. It still is pretty much cyanide.
Over 100 years they've done it that
Yeah,
way.
not heap leach. The tank leach, that's been over 100 years with cyanide. The agitated tank leach has also been over 100 years with cyanide. And say cyanide can do all these. Problem with cyanide is it's toxic. It's environmentally scary to some people, and therefore the regulations are big. In the case of Montana here, you cannot use it.
No,
It's simply
illegal.
not an option.
Yeah, until it's changed, it's illegal here.
Yeah. How many yards to a ton? If you are talking rock in place, you're talking about 2 1/4 tons per cubic yard rock, and about 1 3/4 tons per cubic yard, what they call bank fill. In other words, this is dirt in place. And then about 1 1/4 tons per cubic yard loose fill. Once you picked it up and set it down again, it fluffs it quite a bit.
Yep.
Now those are just rough numbers. It varies depending upon the density of the rock and the particle
Kind of rock.
sizes,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. But those are good rough numbers to start with. Will the cyanide degrade over time? If the pH drops below 9.5 to 10, it will degrade quite rapidly. As a matter of fact, it will degrade so rapidly once you get down to around 8.5 that your solution will be bubbling hydrogen cyanide gas. And that can be extremely dangerous very fast. But cyanide does degrade over time. It is not stable in most natural environments. The pH has to be over 10. So yes, it will degrade. The other thing is cyanide does not accumulate in the body. Okay? If you get a little cyanide and it's not a lethal dose, 10 sublethal doses spaced 10 days apart does not make a lethal dose.
Right.
Mercury, when it gets in you, it stays in you.
Yeah.
Lead, when it gets in you, it stays in you. Pesticides, they get in you, they stay in you. Cyanide, no, your body will rapidly neutralize it. As a matter of fact, I worked at a mine where the solution coming out of the heap had less cyanide per pound than is allowed in wheat flour by the Food and Drug Administration.
Right.
So what do you do with the leftover materials that are leached? Well, first of all, you rinse them with water to get rid of the cyanide, and then you use like a chlorine bleach to neutralize the cyanide. There's also some stuff where they use like resins to absorb the cyanide and such, but basically you just chemically neutralize it. If you look above here, Chris Jordy, CN is cyanide, carbon, nitrogen. These are very, very common and harmless products. That's what the air is made of. You add oxygen and you pretty much got air. Okay. But combined like that, there forms something dangerous. So no problem. Yeah, Jane Monska, it can get complicated, but if you're trying to make money out in nature, this is sometimes the game you got to play. Okay, Jason. Well, we do these live streams every Monday at 6 o'clock Mountain Time here. So if you ever have questions, show up and ask questions, because that's what we're here for. Pardon?
Tell them the format, how usually Jim does it first and then tinfoil hats in the middle, which he can ignore at 7:30. And then
Yeah, and we usually break it up into 3
Might want to
people,
ignore us.
because these will usually go for like 4 hours.
Sometimes, yeah,
So,
it's a little wild.
Jim here is the placer gold expert.
Yep.
I'm the hard rock expert, and Eva's the researcher. She does research on the internet, laws, and things like that. So we break it up, gives each one of us a break just depending upon what we're talking about that week, depends on who's doing the most talking. We're both pretty good at it. So.
Yep, it's interesting, Chris.
Yep.
But it got such a bad connotation from what happened, years and years ago with no cleanup or no rinsing the ore. They just flush it down the creek.
Yeah, it was,
there was some problems there that weren't handled very well, and now we have to deal with the fallout.
Yeah, well, things change.
I mean, Australia, they're using actually a lot of cyanide plants on some of that gold. That's basically alluvial gold, but it's fine gold.
Yeah.
But they can do a heap leach pad or a tank leach system, and it's not that hard to permit. They have, fairly big bonding there, but they're using it, and it's a similar thing that we could use here had they hadn't jumped the gun basically to ban it completely here.
Chain Monska, no, we don't normally sell pay dirt, although if you wanted some crushed hard rock with gold, I do have about 20 or 30 pounds. I could send you a pound or two of that. It uses a special panning technique, but it does work. I do it all the time. This is stuff from Ryan's mine that is pretty easy to pan for free milling. Yeah,
free milling gold.
And yeah, David, this is a side that you're not exposed to generally because most hard rock gold is done by big companies, and their guys usually don't do YouTube videos.
Well, I'll tell you another thing, David, that you'll find in the mining industry now is guys that work at a mine. One is the payloader operator, and one, everybody has their job, and that's all they know. Where if you go back in history, most of especially the smaller family mines that existed, those guys worked to get this kind of education because they couldn't rely on, a big money and a big operation. They had to make a small operation work.
Chain Monska, if you want me to sell you some, do you have my email address there? It's on the front of all my videos too. But send me an email. We'll see what we can get together. Jason, yes, we try and do this show every Monday night. It starts 3 hours before now. This is 9 o'clock our time. We usually start at 6. So whatever time you're at, go back 3 hours. That would be our usual start time on Mondays, unless something just makes it impossible for us to do it. But I don't think we've missed one in 2 or 3 months.
No, we've been doing pretty good since January, sometime in January. And there's old shows also to go back and watch, Jason, if you want to go back in Keith's list. We've covered a lot of pretty good subjects most of the time.
Yeah. And right now I'm working on a project up here called Montana B, and it has some pretty challenging ore, which means we have to do a lot of interesting stuff to it. And yeah, Jason, it might be easier for you to watch the replays, but you can jump in there anytime you can get on and ask questions. Okay. If, again, Jason, if you have a word that you don't understand, ask, and we'll explain. Somebody else probably didn't understand it either. We have people from all over the world that watch this, and so somebody else might have had the exact same question. Okay, David. It's a very nice state. Really like it up here. And be happy to see you if you come in the area. But anyhow, this is a very complex and interesting project for someone of my skill level. It would be very boring to a big boy, but I'm not a big boy.
Well, hey, Jeff, I have a question for you. Are you guys going to set up your own processing? Is that what you're thinking of doing down on your mines?
Yeah, Jeff is
Because I
close
know
by
they were,
here.
they were trying to look at, using Raidersburg or somebody, but now that's off the table. So I was curious.
So he was planning sometime to bring a sample by and
Come
have
up
us
and meet you.
take a look at things. Yep. And so we can play some interesting games and see what happens.
Interesting to talk to you on that too.
Yeah.
See what you're doing and.
Yep. And unfortunately, hey Sherry, how's it going? A lot of the issues have to do with the government, and if they would just get out of our way, we could get a lot more done. And I mean, I'm not saying just no regulation at all, but just reasonable. If you need a road built, say we need a road built. And they go, okay, $10,000 bonding, and you build the damn road. And then leave it there, instead of this.
Yeah.
We got to completely obliterate it and smooth it over and rake it and replant grass when you're done. If you got a mine up at the top of the hill, that road could come in handy. So, as I say, they're not very reasonable in many cases. Right now, they are vastly more unreasonable than they've been for a while. Yeah, I like the idea of mobile plants. It allows you to recoup your capital investment. And also, if it's mobile enough, you can set it up, run it, and then take it home so that nobody messes with it when you're not there, too.
Well, Jeff, are you guys going to need flotation for your ore? Or are you looking at something like this, doing some leaching?
As what he was describing, he's going to need flotation or
That's
gravity
what I thought
first.
he was. That's why they were
He's
looking
got
at
so much
Raidersburg,
heavy
but-
metals. Yeah. I'd say it's either flotation or gravity for Jeff, I think. It would be unusual for his tailings to still have much gold left in them, probably associated with the heavy minerals. But
I don't
it
know.
never hurts to check. Always assay your tailings. You never know where stuff is going until you check.
Yeah, where there's value.
Yeah, never assume, as somebody in this room found out last week. Who was that guy? I don't know, tall, ugly,
All right.
65.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't
Well,
bad there.
I thought that gave you a good learning opportunity anyway, to tell everybody, okay, here's
Yeah.
what, here's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I did.
well,
Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work.
yeah, if you've made a mistake, somebody else has probably made it too.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like I found out a long time ago. If you're having trouble doing a job because you don't have the tool to do it, somebody probably makes it. Because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
probably not the only person that's ever had to do
Usually,
that job.
I mean, occasionally we built a tool for a certain job, but some of that's just backyard logic too, I guess.
And some of it is, yeah, they make the tool, but it's $1,256
We
for
only
one
need it
use.
once.
Screw that
Yeah,
crap.
We only need it once.
I'll weld a handle to it and then cut it off when I'm done.
Yeah, that can happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes that's the easiest way to go. So anyhow, these are your basic methods of milling, and the reason you would use leaching is you got fine gold and nothing else makes as much economic sense. The nice thing about leaching is it is relatively simple. Once you dial in the parameters,
Right, once you have the program figured out,
once you have the recipe,
all your testing and get the recipe, it's like baking.
Yep.
The science is done at that point. Short of testing your ore occasionally to make sure you're still within your parameters.
Yeah.
Or making those adjustments.
So anyhow, that's basically what I've got on the leaching for tonight. Anyone got any specific questions? It's only 9:10. Wow.
Only.
Running out of stuff to talk about so early. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty focused on these leaching tests because it's kind of the key to the whole thing. And I don't have any of the stuff. So I've got to purchase or manufacture or do everything, every step of the way right now. And that just makes it, a little more complicated, but more interesting.
Right.
But I can't go quickly, Okay, David.
Yeah, we'll see if you're leaving.
So you guys will get to see basically what I'm doing here as I get it done. Looks like we can dissolve the gold okay. Step 1 seems
To work.
to work pretty well.
Yeah, it looks like it's working.
Next step is determine what size we need to grind the ore to get it to get good recoveries with minimum effort and minimum slimes. Slimes are those real fine solids that tend to plug up and float away and just are a pain in the ass. Stuff more like clays rather than sand. And determining your best grind size is very important. Again, everything depends on your ore. And if I was a super genius and been doing this for 30 years as an extractive metallurgist, I could probably just tell you off the top of my head.
Quickest way. Yeah.
But I'm not. I know enough to be able to run the tests and figure it out.
Right. And ask the right questions.
I've used fluxes that contain some borax, but never pure borax. The ones we were using had soda ash and
I use borax.
I think some potash too.
As flux when I was smelting, smelting bars.
Yeah. Well, good for you, Jason. That's excellent. Well, Chain Monska, the first thing you have to do is find the right spot in the river to shovel the dirt from. Very, very important. First step. Yeah, trying to get things adjusted can be a pain in the butt. Luckily, I'm working for someone who can provide, the funds for all the laboratory tests and stuff. Now, Jeff, what size is that free gold? Because 35% free gold could be useful to separate by itself. So the rest of it's in the other stuff. Now it's potentially possible that, I think that's redundant. 200 mesh, yeah, it's getting pretty fine.
Yeah,
My concentrator might be able to get that without too much trouble, but 200 mesh, you'll need a decent table or something like that. And you might also see about regrinding the concentrates. Once you make the concentrates, if you regrind them finer, you might be able to recover more free gold. But again, that's what tests are for. It's a lot cheaper to build a laboratory apparatus than it is to build a mill and then find out you needed to change that, whatever.
Right. You need to work the science out first.
Another thing I was thinking, let's suppose, and I don't know how the economics on this would work, but you're exactly the right person to ask. Let's suppose you took a cylinder of steel, okay, with holes in the ends.
Yeah.
Like a ball mill,
Except
but a lot thinner, okay? And you pour your slurry in here, and this is your agitation tank.
Yeah.
And then the slurry comes out here. And if you made something, say, 4 by 8 feet, how much would that cost to make?
Well, you'd want it thick enough that it doesn't wear out. too fast.
You might even
Because with running rock in it, it's no different
no,
than
it's
a
just gonna be
ball mill.
slurry.
Right, I realize that. So it's slick. It's
It's
not
sand.
right. It's
Yeah.
sliding because of liquid.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's got to be thick enough so it's rigid and it's not going
it
to
would depend on
flex.
how complicated you really want to make it. Actually, it wouldn't cost a lot to make.
That's about as complicated. Some
Rolling,
kind of drive
rolling
mechanism.
the cylinder or using a 1,000-pound propane cylinder or something would be the quickest way to do it. You know, 800 or 1,000-gallon propane tank, because it's actually pretty thick walled in already, so it'll last a long, long time.
All you got to do is find
Then
one
you
that
just
no
gotta-
longer meets their specs.
Right,
So they're just
that's
scrapping it
right.
out.
Yeah, it had a pressure
Yeah.
leak, or after a certain date they won't use them anymore nowadays. But as far as being able to roll it, I could use 2 rear ends out of pickups. Right, tires here, and here on both sides, literally 2 axles, and there you are. It's real simple. Electric motor to drive one of the axles.
The other one just idling.
The other one just idles. Yeah, I mean, that would be, the barnyard build would be really actually easy
Now,
to do.
Would you use like rollers here to keep
Yeah,
it from
you
drifting?
have to do something to keep it tracking so it stays.
Yeah. Just
Right.
doesn't wander off.
Otherwise, that's what it'll do. It'll climb. The more you load the material in it, the more it'll want to climb.
Okay.
A trommel will do the same thing. You have to have a stop on the high end of it, because the trommel, as you load it, it'll want to climb away.
Okay. Because that would be it's just a large bottle. The bottle rolls is an agitation tank.
Yep.
And
You could do
you might
throughput.
even be able to, by having a standpipe here and a standpipe here, you might even be able to run it like 3/4 full. Good night, Jane Monska.
Yeah, that's true, Chris. 55-gallon drums would work too.
Yeah, but
They
I'm
could be
looking for.
plastic. They're actually easy to
If
handle.
we had 200 pounds an hour and a 6-hour retention time, you need 1,200 pounds of material, which means 2,400 pounds of water,
Yeah.
which winds up, I don't know, I had a calculator somewhere, about 64 per cubic feet. So 2,400, call it 3,000 pounds of water. Divided by 64. 50 cubic feet. And if you had a 4-foot cylinder, let's see, pi d, so pi 3 is 12. 4 feet long, about 200 pounds an hour. 4-foot diameter. Now, the big propane tank probably has a little longer and skinnier dimensions than that, but
Well,
do the
there's
same
different size ones.
Yeah.
You'd probably be in the area of a 500-gallon tank. That wouldn't even be that big.
no, not that huge.
No, it'd be actually fairly easy to build it. Just you've got a bell here so that you've got a place that you're feeding in that's sealed, kind of.
Yeah, if you just did it right at the trunnion here, you wouldn't even need to do that. You could just have it, basically.
And then
you have
a system of flushing
funnel
it.
goes in here.
A system at some point of flushing it. If you have to have some kind of a
Yeah,
gate,
you'll have to have a
gate in
plug
it,
or
a gate
something
in
there,
it
yeah.
or something. But yeah, it's doable. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, you probably want to have more of a valve than a plug if you could do it, because that way you don't just open up, things go everywhere. You just screw in a hose or a pipe and open the valve to drain it. Yeah. Shouldn't be too hard.
No, that wouldn't take us a long time to build, and I think we could probably do it.
And say cost-wise, if you got a used tank that was non-certified,
Yeah.
they're just going to sell it for scrap steel prices.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's an efficient way to do it and get what you need. And even if it doesn't work long term for you, you haven't invested, $25,000 in it at least,
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate part of brand new equipment. It's so expensive. And then if it doesn't work, now what do you do with it? You end up selling it for half of what you got in it.
Yeah, if you bought it for scrap, you can sell it for scrap, you're okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's why I want to see your stuff, Jason. You made it good. Huh. 2 women called, huh? You weren't calling smoking, were you, little one?
No.
Yeah, that would work, wouldn't it, Chris? A nice old cement truck. That'd be slick.
Yeah, that would basically work.
That'd be a nice way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say to start out with, I'm looking at roughly 200 pounds an hour is kind of my rough ballpark thing, because the mining rate's going to be modest at best to start with. We'll see how much ore we get blocked out and stuff like that. That could be quite a lot. It could be fairly modest, but that's kind of my first thing.
4 meters on this thing. That doesn't sound long enough to me.
I like Chris's idea. Just drive the cement truck to the site, load it up with slurry, drive it back. By the time you get there, it's ready to recover.
Yeah.
In a way, that's not a bad idea. A cement truck can haul about 8 tons.
Oh, I know.
It can haul a lot. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cement mixers can do it. Absolutely. For small batches, you could use one from Home Depot. That would be a good scale up size.
Who was it? Chris on Vogus, or one of them was using a little cement mixer with balls for a ball mill.
For crushing, yeah.
Yeah, they're crushing.
It wasn't working real good.
No, it is. It's a real that's a slow process to do it that way, but it.
Yep. So
I've used a
it's not
small
designed for
plastic cement mixer as an amalgamation circuit.
Yeah. You can do that.
Some of that black sand that one year just about drove me insane.
Yep. I'll take over for a minute. I gotta. This is the little boy's room here.
All right. Well, that would work smoking. That's pretty cool. I'm kind of liking Chris's idea of the cement truck, to be honest with you. That
I'm
has.
thinking that's an excellent idea. I had already mentioned the cement truck to Bear.
Mohammed, hydraulic riffles are like using square tubing for a riffle and injecting, they drill holes in it and they're actually pumping water into the riffle so that it's lifting some of the material. They use them in Alaska some, where they get into some real heavy black sand in that, to keep the sluice box active because of the tonnage they're putting through. It can be pipes sometimes. It can be injected from under the box up through the carpet also. I've seen it done different ways. But it's using a live riffle that's actually, you're pumping water directly to each of the riffles and feeding the water into the bottom of the sluice box with injected water. Yeah. Yeah, they used them on some of the big dredges too. They had hydraulic riffles. That's the way we did it, Chris. My one plant has oscillating sluice box, and we made note on Dirty Goat's operation up there. He has an oscillating box also that he can bang the box. My box actually bumps forward like down the box. His oscillates side to side. You can hydraulic speed control to get it just to where it would bump. It bumps each side just a little bit. Yeah, you can shake it, Mohammed, either way, left or right, or down the box if you want to. That's how mine works. Mine actually bounces the box down, and that'll keep a fluid bed active, if you've got real heavy material. Yeah, that's the way we did it on that plant of mine. We did the vertical, and I liked it better. It didn't seem to flush the material up on the sides of the box. It would bump it against the next riffle kind of, and it was just enough to keep that black sand, the lights would get picked out into the stream on top. It did a good job, and a lot of times I didn't use it. I didn't always use it, but when I needed it, we could turn it on. That's kind of what it did. It actually would, just like a table, it would, when it bumped, the gold would stay locked in behind the riffles. So, it was like bumping your gold pan to climb the gold. That's kind of how the box acted, by doing a vertical bump on the box. Yeah, that. Just clean up some. Any other questions? Kind of keep it going here as long as you guys want to.
I really like Chris's idea of a cement truck, but probably not for the volumes we got right now.
Right.
So we're looking at
some
the next
point,
size.
that might be
But yeah,
that would be an economical way of doing it.
Yeah, for an agitation tank of 8 to 10 tons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can back it out and flush it.
Yeah,
it leaves you with a lot of opportunity.
Have some hydraulic quick connects, so when it's parked, you just use an external hydraulic pump on a motor instead of running your, vehicle engine all the time.
Yeah,
it's not designed to do that well.
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't, Chris. I've never ran continuous cleanup boxes. Smoking, if you get into some heavy black sands or scheelite can be a problem. Garnet can be a problem if you're in a gold area where you've got a lot of garnet. It can plug your sluice box, and then there's no place for the gold to settle. And having a box that can bump and move, or going to hydraulic riffles, will help keep that some of that material being sorted out of the box, so you've got room for your gold.
Hard to tell, smoking, but it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think an oscillating trommel would be. I mean,
No.
Just the rolling it gives it 100% agitation, basically.
Yeah, really, a trommel, you're trying to clean it, and having it roll would definitely provided you've got enough length in your trommel to have that log washing area before the screening. The alternative to that, Mohammed, would be to go to just a screen deck, 1 or 2 screens on a screen deck for all your sizing and washing on the screen deck. Hungary.
Ah,
That's pretty cool.
Camille, you're oh goodness. Ah, man, my brain is messed up here.
I think he's been here before.
You know Andres, right? I hear it's pretty wet there in Hungary right now, but not not catastrophically so. Not like Germany.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Andres, I guess, had some scares there, but managed to get through it without any significant damage. But boy, Germany did not.
No, boy, it looked like some of them areas there got pretty wiped out.
A lot of dead people, too. Yeah. It's
the punch plate will make some difference versus wire, Mohammed. That will make some difference.
Yep. No, it was nice to hear he was okay, and Hungary made it through all right. Germany, and I guess some of the Netherlands and Belgium, if I'm not mistaken, they just got whacked.
They got the rain we need.
We didn't need that kind of rain.
No, we don't need that kind, but we need some.
Yep. Any coming up in the weather? Did you notice?
I didn't even look lately here.
Well, let me see. That's why you got 2 computers, by gosh.
And, yeah, it's staying right west of us, all of it. It's been doing that all afternoon. Staying on the west side of the mountain. At least somebody's getting some.
Let's look at the 10-day. Low 90s. No rain showing in the well, no, Monday. That was today. Oh well. Is it supposed to rain tonight? Oh, come on. Few showers this evening. Well, I didn't notice any. Yeah. Low 90s. Partly cloudy. Pretty much sooty, I think. That's my guess. Going to be smoky.
Well, small scale, Mohammed, it's hard to get a constant feed rate. I'm thinking that's what you're asking. Yeah, feeding. Ideally, you want to, get your water right so your sluice box is running, with enough water over the top of your riffles. You've got a slipstream, and then you want to watch. At that point, you could feed it pretty heavy, and as long as the angle of the box and everything is correct, if you stop, you should be able to tell that it's leaving a vortice, or you can see little patches of carpet behind the riffles or whatever. You don't want to overfeed it because you're going to push gold out the end. But a 1-foot box can take quite a bit of material. If you're there with a shovel, you could be shoveling fairly constantly into a 1-foot box, and it should be able to handle that, provided you've got the water to go with it.
Oh, you need some kind of classifier on it too, right?
Ideally, yes. Or
about 1 inch.
Yeah, something like that, where there's no reason to wash bigger rocks, really.
Yeah.
Unless you're in an area where you got 3-ounce nuggets, then you want to size your screening you want to size your screening to the size of the gold particles
Metal
that might be
detector
there.
pile.
Yeah, it might be there. But
By the way, somebody was asking me today, everybody out there, listen up just a second. What metal detector gets the greatest depth? Apparently he's working there. It's overseas somewhere where they metal detect the areas, and whoever's got the greatest depth gets the stuff nobody else can see. So what's the opinion on that, everybody?
as far as I know, it's a mine lab. But
Like
that would depend on
like
the
a
size
GPX
of the,
4000 or something, or what?
Well, the new one is. It's a new one. 10,000. I don't know. It's high end. They're expensive.
Okay, we got one mine lab. Yeah, I know it depends on the ground, Chris.
Yeah.
It's overseas. He doesn't speak much
And
English.
depth can depend on your coil size a lot too. The power that you got and your coil size.
Mhm.
You want to go deep. You need to get to a big. You got to get to big coils.
Big
You'll get to
coils,
30
okay.
inch.
The new one is a 6000.
New one.
GPX 6000. A hot foot rug? What's the hot foot rug?
Oh, they have a drag behind
Oh, okay.
metal detector. You drag it.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly, Glenn. You got it. Yeah, coil size, frequency, and strength of signals. You got to have the power to get the depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then mineralized ground or something can affect that depth a lot, depending on
Well,
where
as long
you're
as
at.
he's better than the other guys, you know?
Oh yeah, gold's going to be going up real soon, I think. A lot. There's a company out of Germany that makes one too, and I can't remember their name, but they make a really neat. It's not cheap though. It's an expensive metal detector.
Best in the world and not cheap?
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah. It's a good one for depth and for discriminating like tunnels and stuff. Also, it'll do some like ground penetrating radar as well.
$30K. Ouch. Do you get a kiss with that?
I was thinking 25, Chris, but you might be right. The new one they got might be 30K. Yeah.
Try not to argue with Chris. You lose.
I'm not going to argue with Chris. I won't argue with you.
Yeah. Not a handheld swinger type? I don't know. A handheld swinger sounds good to me.
Bear. Bad bear.
How do you pick her up? Like a six pack? Sound like 25K plus accessories, like the wheel kit. Dowsing rods are cheap. Yeah, but you got to be able to douse, Glenn. Oh my goodness. It's not a race? Man. It's not a race. Bigger is deeper.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, in a lot of cases, some of this ground they work shallow, even the old miners, and they didn't get to some of the good gold. So depth does, depth, something you need to deal with as a metal detector.
GPZ 7000, huh? I wouldn't be surprised, Jeff. Have you ever used a vibrating screen wash plant there,
Yeah.
Jim? Jim has.
Yeah, I've used vibrating screens.
I haven't used wash plants.
it's always about the material that you're trying to wash. What's the most effective? I mean, if you don't need a trommel, you're better off to go to a screen deck if you can, because the yardage increase is much better. You can do more yardage on a screen than you can through a trommel.
Dirty water down a sluice box just as well as clean. I think it depends on how dirty. I mean, dirty is a relative term.
If it gets to be too thick, it will carry your fine gold. It's because it's a viscosity issue. Your thickness of your material is like the difference between oil and water. You know, the water particles are much smaller than the oil. The oil work as kind of one whole, kind of moves along as a complete piece.
Yeah, in other words, it doesn't have to be clear.
No, it doesn't have to be
but
clear.
It has to flow just
right,
like water.
It has to flow. And if it isn't flowing, if it's more like a mudslide, you're just going to carry the gold. You're not going to get separation. The whole concept of a sluice is to get separation of the particles and get the heaviest particles to drop in the sluice box. No, I was referring more, Muhammad, to the viscosity, the thickness differences between the two. You don't want your water to start to become thick like oil. You want it to be like water. You want it to flow clean and steady. If it starts to get too much mud, you know, if the pond you're sucking from or the bottom of the river, you're picking up too much debris, you'll pick up the viscosity of the water to where you won't get separation very well, except in the heavy gold particles.
Hair trimmer on my pan screens to vibrate them.
Sounds like a way to get something done.
Yeah. It'll find an engine block at 12 feet.
Yeah.
Need to find an engine block? No, you wouldn't use oil in a sluice box. I would think there might be some liquids that are thinner than water, but most of them would probably be flammable.
They use grease in a sluice box for diamonds, and actually some gold will stick to grease too if it's not hydrophobic or anaphobic.
Yeah. Remember the bacon grease test?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You want clean water ideally. The cleaner the better, but
yeah, I think this guy is looking for absolute maximum depth. This is an area where this is how people make their money. And the way is, if yours can go deeper than the other guy, you're searching ground the other person can't.
Or in areas where it may be, more ground cover or side slope where it, slipped over the years.
Well, I told him
depth can, could possibly lead you to some big gold nuggets.
Around here, just up in the scratch gravel, there's some guys got a thing where he just dozes the surface.
Yeah, they skim it and then they metal detect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple guys up there doing that, actually. Yeah, they dozer 6 inches off and then they metal detect, and they do that in Australia too. Some of them places. They do the same thing.
This talking about bulldozers.
Yeah.
My brother's working at a mine, and we've got a dozer operator that, he's certified to run a dozer, or my brother is actually able to run a dozer. My brother is only certified to run the haul truck and the grader. And he said they built a ramp. First of all, the ramp was like 16% grade or something. It was a pretty steep ramp.
I guess.
The guy got so bad, Randy said, I thought the truck was going to roll driving up the ramp because one side dropped about 3 feet compared to the other side of the truck. And then the load shifted.
He didn't.
Because
he
the
went up and had
no,
it. Oh,
this-
Oh man.
just doesn't know how to carry it flat. I mean, how hard is it to keep a road flat side to side within 3 feet in a truck width?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Not hard actually, but
No.
first you got to know how to run the equipment.
Say, he's like, wow. And this guy had 4 hours. You know? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Although some of the stuff they got over there is all GPS guided and everything,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you just drive it back and forth and it does all
Right,
the work.
It does all the cutting.
Wow.
Cut and fill. Yeah, some of that new technology is crazy.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any good questions?
What are the winning lottery numbers?
Yeah. How to get rich.
Ask one of our Australian friends. They live in the future.
No, isn't it 6 o'clock back east? It's only 3 o'clock here. So yeah, they'd be kind of in the future too, huh? Oh.
Yeah. Well, I've gained my knowledge by doing it, and asking a lot of questions from old guys who did it before me.
Notice how he didn't mention was humble.
Oh, you're humble too, yeah. And knowledgeable.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
I think it's getting about that time.
Well, next week we'll have more Keith's subject there with the leaching.
Yeah, smoking. I know what you're saying. It's getting pretty hilarious. Next thing to go will be the operator. I've never tried an undersluice myself that much, but I have worked a dredge that had one, and seemed to work okay. Thank you, Patrick.
I could see having one, Jeff, if you had really a lot of fine gold. You know, if, let's just say if 70% of your gold was really fine, I could see where an undersluice would be an advantage farther down after the main sluice or toward the bottom of that, taking that fine material off and running it through a finer sluice.
No, an undersluice, Mohammed, would be you have a sluice underneath the classifying screen, and the
main
coarser
sluice.
material goes on top of the classifying screen, and the finer stuff goes through the screen to the sluice underneath it. Thank you, Jason. Well, we'll definitely have some more test results on the leaching, so there'll be more discussion of that. I'm also going to post a video tomorrow on our trip out to Montana Bee this week. And it's on, we're trying to uncover the vein along surface, the one that has the ore pockets at depth. Try and follow it along and see what we can find. And didn't notice anything huge, but the assays are on the way. So hopefully by next week we'll have the assays from that, and I'll be able to say something about it. That gold was so fine. The one sample that, right next to the shaft there, I panned, like 0.01 ounces per ton visible gold.
Yeah.
It was better than an ounce. It is just so freaking fine. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and you can't see it.
Yeah. Cool, Jeff. That would be great.
Yeah.
Oh, and if anyone knows a good field exploration geologist, let me know. Then wouldn't mind working in Guinea for a few months. I got some people who are looking for one.
Did you call Peter and talk to him?
Not yet.
Oh.
That's
I
right.
told him you were going to call him probably.
Yeah, I've just been so
And
busy.
he said, "Oh, I could give you. There's a few guys."
Okay, I got it. As a matter of fact, I think it's underneath your thing right there.
I didn't know if he would, and who knows, he might too. I don't know.
No, it'd be just on the other side there, I think. Then.
Yeah, that's all right. It's probably up here somewhere.
Yeah, there it is, right there underneath that yellow thing.
Yeah, give him a holler.
I will.
You bet, Smoking. Thank you guys for being here too. You know.
I'm glad you found some really good stuff there, Smoking.
Yeah, man, that got me excited. I want to be doing that.
It got Jim excited, so I moved over here.
yeah. I want to be. I want to be.
My chair out.
I want to be scooping gold out like that.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I was out at a friend of mine's operation, and he had a whole bunch of buckets of concentrates that they hadn't cleaned up yet. I took about a 2-cup scoop out of one and threw it in a pan and went over to his little panning station, and I panned it, and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of gold for just 2 cups worth of concentrates, but that's as close as I've gotten to any nice gold yet this year.
I tell you what, that pay dirt that Prospector Tripp sent me, that
was good. That was some nice looking gold in it.
Pretty good for a thing of pay dirt. Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Let's see if I got it written down here.
You had it, but I don't know if you do.
Yeah, there we go, right there.
It'll be on the video.
Yeah, you can just freeze frame it there. It'll be right near the end. That's $45 an assay, and he usually gets it to you in about a week.
Yep, he's good that way.
Yep.
He fish quick and efficient. And I've tested him against other assayers with, splitting samples, and he's been right there every time. So
yep.
I have faith that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Was Wayne the one over in Deer Lodge, Jeff? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh. Okay, I'm fading out, folks.
We're gonna call it a night here. So,
any questions? Going once. And thanks again to everyone, especially Chris, for all the help here.
Definitely, thank you, Chris.
Any more questions? Going twice.
Well, we'll hope to see you next week then. And good night, everybody.
Good night, Chris. Well, I guess that's it. 3 times. And the stream. Well, we had to do 2 streams again tonight, just like old times, huh?